Illinois Congressman Krishnamoorthi is doing his best to save the post office while everything else is going on in Washington. It is, I guess, the understatement of the year to describe it as busy, lively. I don't know, Raja, what would be the adjective?
Well, you're talking about the hearings from last Monday, correct, Joan?
Well, I'm talking about your schedule these days with all the different things that you're trying to keep track of. Crazy, maybe.
Yeah, it's craziness. You know, we had the hearings, and then obviously we have a huge amount of demand for constituent services. And then now we've learned from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence that the Trump administration is no longer going to give us the intelligence we need to protect ourselves from the Russian threat for the upcoming election. So we're dealing with that as well. So, yeah, a lot. It's another slow fake news day, as you know.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And, you know, I guess I never realized in previous administrations how much at least the relationship between the White House and Congress depended on norms, or this is the way we've always done it. It's unethical to do it any other way. I mean, Donald Trump seems to have thrown all that out the window. So for this latest effort of his to keep information from you, I mean, are you going to have to go to court? Are you going to, how do you fix this? How do you stop him?
Well, I think that, Chairman Schiff has said that we will compel them to produce this information because at the end of the day, this information is not Donald Trump's. It's not even the intelligence community's proprietary information. It's the American people's information. We paid for it. The taxpayers deserve to have it. And why? Because it protects them. It helps them to be better informed when they go into the 2020 elections, and to be able to assess the information that they see on social media and from other places. You know, we know right now the Russians are waging an active interference campaign in the 2020 elections. Why do we know this? Because the Director of National Intelligence and the Trump administration actually said this publicly. And now it's up to us to be able to question, intelligence community officials to understand what they're doing about it, what additional resources they need, and how do we make sure that we effectively combat it this time.
And what you've just explained is that with trying to prevent you from getting this information, Donald Trump is acting like it's his information, just as he did his campaign speech in front of the White House like it was his house and not the people's house. And what I thought was the most disquieting was Mark Meadows saying, not even denying that they violate the Hatch Act on a regular basis, but saying nobody cares. It's, the chief of staff of the White House saying, nobody cares if we break this law. I don't know.
I think that is symbolic of kind of a lawless culture that kind of permeates the Trump administration right now. They flout, not only norms, as you mentioned, but also rules, regulations, and laws on a constant basis. And so basically it's up to us in Congress to basically provide oversight and make sure we shine as much light and bring transparency to the situation and hold them to account. But it's also ultimately something that the American people are going to have to keep in mind as they vote in November. That is the ultimate way to hold this administration accountable.
I couldn't agree with you more. 63 days. 63 days.
Who's counting?
Yeah. And frankly, after Joe Biden wins, I think it's going to get worse, because from the time Joe Biden wins till the time he's inaugurated, I think Trump is going to go nuts. And, I think you're going to be in Washington 24/7 putting out fires. So I suggest you get some fireproof clothes right now, because I think the crazy is only going to get worse. So tell me, I have shared repeatedly my impressions of the Democratic National Convention also the Republican National Convention. My tagline is, I watch it so you don't have to. What were your impressions after watching all of this?
Well, gosh, I think that they were really stark contrasts about what kind of a country we are and who we want to be. I thought the Democratic Convention really presented a very positive image of America. It looked like America. It looked like America in the sense of the diversity of people who spoke. It looked like America in terms of what are the ideals that we want to uphold, ideals such as equality, justice for all, and the idea that anybody should have the economic opportunities to climb the ladder of success and achieve the American dream. And what was really striking about the Democratic Convention is that you had a spectrum of people all the way from John Kasich, a former Republican governor, to Bernie Sanders, all supporting Joe Biden and united against the divisiveness, incompetence, and corruption of the Trump administration. And so that is the picture that I saw there. With regards to the Republican convention, my goodness, what a contrast. It looked like they were celebrating a cult of personality in Donald Trump. They were reinforcing, the divisive racial politics that we so desperately need to get rid of. And, they were somehow trying to convince us that the pandemic is behind us, that they successfully conquered the pandemic. In essence, to me, it looked like state TV. It looked like, one time I had a chance to travel to China, Joan, for work a long time ago, before I went to Congress. And I went to the hotel room and I switched on the TV, and it turned out every channel was Chinese Communist Party channel 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they all portrayed the same image of the Chinese Communist Party leadership. Our beloved leader is here to protect us and guide us. And that's what it felt like when I watched parts of the Republican convention.
I thought it was interesting that when the RNC tried to do those testimonials from people the way the Democrats had done, and then afterwards people were saying, well, I never knew that was going to be for the RNC. I don't support, one of the women actually said, I don't support Donald Trump. I'm not going to vote for him. They actually tricked people. And apparently even the people who were involved in the White House naturalization ceremony, those 5 or 6 people who became U.S. citizens, they were not told ahead of time that they were going to be part of the Republican National Convention. Wow. They were not told either. And one of the women said, nobody asked my permission. And frankly, I would have said no. And one of the other testimonials from, there was a woman who lives in public housing. And she thought she was being interviewed for some documentary. And then she saw her clip at the RNC and she said, I don't support Donald Trump. Like, nobody ever asked me. I just thought that was just so amazing. We have a caller who wants to ask us a question. Claire is calling in from Chicago. Hey, Claire, how are you?
Hi, love your show. Great conversation going, and I have so many questions, but I'll try to keep it down to a few. One is, you mentioned earlier that he's losing support with the military. How about the police? They seem to be a lot of them seem to be Trump supporters. That's one question. And the other thing, when you were talking about a lawless president doing whatever he wants, he used Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah at the convention, and his daughter, Leonard Cohen's estate, I think they're looking at suing him. He was a Canadian liberal, and how dare him use Leonard's song.
Yeah, and Neil Young's going after him too.
Oh, yeah, and I was a big fan of Leonard Cohen, but I just wanted to know about breaking the law and what type of suit does can be have from using that music, and then about the police. And finally, one last quick comment is on Saturday, Dick Kay had some guests from Chicago Board of Election. I wonder if you might be having them. It was quite informative. I missed a little of it, but
well, you know, it's so funny that you should say this. Karen Yarborough, the Cook County clerk, is going to be on our show tomorrow at 3:30. Claire, so
wow.
send me or text me your questions or call in when I have her, because we are going to talk about voting. Thanks so much for your call, Claire. You know, Raja, she makes a good point. When the New York PD endorsed Donald Trump, you know, I mean, they're a union. They have the legal right to do that. But I heard some people saying, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right for a police department that you would think, like the military, is kind of supposed to be neutral. Like, you wouldn't want to think that a police officer who was talking to you was going to be predisposed to be against you because you support one candidate and he supports the other candidate. It does seem like a little bit of a uncomfortable area. I mean, I know it's not illegal, but I can see where, like, if you were an African-American person living in New York and you see the NYPD comes out and endorses a president many perceive to be a white supremacist. I mean, how are you supposed to feel when you interact with that police department? It just doesn't seem right.
I think you raised some good points, and I think that, I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump is going to Kenosha is to kind of charge those divisions even further. When he visits, I don't think he's going to be spending a lot of time with the Blake family. I think he's going to be spending a lot of time with the police and telling them they're protecting the community. And I think that this is exactly what I believe Joe Biden should be talking about as well, which is that this is Donald Trump's America. We are living in Donald Trump's America, where his stoking these divisions between people is leading to the violence and the problems that we see on TV right now. And he pretends that he can somehow bring law and order and be the firefighter to extinguish the flames. But how can you do that when you're the arsonist?
Yeah.
And I think his incendiary rhetoric is what's driving the polarization in our country right now.
And I thought it was interesting in his recent speeches. In his recent speeches, you would think Joe Biden was president, because he's like, look at all this violence and look at all this lawlessness.
Right,
and vote for me because I'll fix it. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're the president now. If you could fix it, you would have. Exactly.
That's exactly the issue that I think that we as Democrats have to highlight. I think that he's somehow trying to distance himself from this situation, even though he's presiding over it.
Exactly.
And I think that the more that we point that out, and the fact that, we haven't seen this type of unrest in previous presidencies for a long time. Certainly not when Barack Obama was president. Certainly not when Bill Clinton was, or even George W. Bush, for that matter. It's unique to Donald Trump.
Yeah. Let's go back to the phone line. Stephanie is calling in from Kankakee. Hey, Stephanie, you have a question for us as well?
Yes. A friend of mine's son, she's in Texas, was disputing a teacher on history. This kid is a history buff, and he loves history. And he was getting this revised history that literally said that, in the 13th century, Africans and Europeans came to America for better job opportunities. He told her, no, Africans actually came here as slaves, were forced, and that your parents, they turned out their jail. And then some did come for a better life, but not jobs. Anyway, the bottom line is she got suspended for being disruptive in class. She went to the school board. I'm not going to mention her name or anything because she might do some litigation against them to get a suspension. They labeled her kid a problem child with behavior disorders because she would not absorb their history. Now, my problem is if we don't start teaching, and if people are at home, maybe they should just start teaching their kids the real history. Look what they're learning. Can we get the schools to not use revised history? Can we force the Board of Education? I mean, I know we can if we get in that fight, but what can we what can we do to make them stop lying to our children, even within our schools, and get real history back to our children?
Well, thank you for that point, Stephanie. And I may have mentioned last week there was some journalist who got a lot of attention, Raja, by calling for the fact that until we could redo the history curriculum in our schools, that we should stop teaching history altogether, because that was better than teaching a sort of a whitewashed version of history that not all, but many schools still teach. I know this is a little bit pushing your area of expertise here, but I thought that, when I first saw that, stop teaching history. And then I thought to myself, well, what's worse, not teaching history at all, or teaching a history that paints over some of the darkest moments that we've lived through as a nation? What do you think?
Well, I think there's that old saying, history is written by the victors.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, those victors happen to be, people that really practiced various customs and traditions and practiced racism and oppression of a kind that is completely antithetical to everything we believe in. And so we have to really look at this history very carefully. And I think that there was a bill in the Illinois General Assembly that talks about how it's so important that slavery and the history of African Americans be taught in a certain way and be taught in a way that's actually accurate. And I think those types of pieces of legislation make all the sense in the world right now.
Well, I really thank you for coming on with us, and keep up your efforts to save our post office. I know that's one of the things that you've been working so hard at.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
tell you about a win? Can I tell you
Please,
about a rare...
please.
Well,
anytime.
I'm the chairman of the Oversight Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy. I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but I have launched a number of investigations, and we've actually gotten a number of victories. But today's victory was especially sweet. We had investigated the procurement of ventilators by the Trump administration during the height of the pandemic. They basically tore up an Obama-era contract whereby we were supposed to pay $3,000 for about 15,000 ventilators. And if we had actually executed that contract, we would have had them when we needed them at the height of the crisis in New York, and arguably we still need them now. They tore up that contract. They entered into a new deal where they're paying $15,000 per ventilator for the exact same ones that they had the Obama administration had contracted for. We shined a light on it. We produced a lengthy report, and we went to the public with it. And today, they canceled that contract, saving almost $500 million of hard-earned taxpayer money. So chalk one up for the taxpayer today, and
Good
for
job.
transparency and oversight.
Well, keep up the good work. We're very happy that you're in Washington fighting for the state of Illinois. I think you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for joining us to share it with us.
Thank you, Joan. Take care.